Part 124. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziwei. Chapter 1241. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Zion Mu Legend. Dead hooligan, don't you be gentle, be gentle. Ah, no, with my current consciousness and cultivation, the control of power can be said to be wonderful, and, it shouldn't be too slow, otherwise, you are not afraid of shui ling or joke. This is what you said is so wonderful, my legs are soft and I have no strength at all, you want to kill me. Underscore. How is it possible? You see, I have prepared it for you. This wild jade orchid can make you 100 times more spiritual, and then you can refine these few plants, and you should soon be able to break through and rebuild. What, one more time? Of course, how can Jiu break through this kind of thing? If it is broken once or twice, it can be enjoyable. Xiu is the biggest. You. Okay, obediently, buttocks, Miss Han, good wife, you are practicing first, or you will practice here, otherwise I will hug you in after a while, and then I will hug you again, so that's too bad, I will go out and see their situation first. Roll. Haha. When Wei Suo rushed out of the quiet room he dug out, he was very proud, like a marmot who stole a big fruit. Even Xuanhuan Dafa, which is only a mid-level skill, has been cultivated to the power of immortal level, and I am really crying ghosts and gods. However, it is no wonder that Wei Suo is proud. Han Weiwei's unique physique and practiced Zijing Liulai are a perfect match for him. This time the double cultivation allowed his Xuanxia Ghost Claw's power to directly break through the Xian order. Even if a general monk can get such a technique as Xuanxia Dafa, one is that there is no Weizhuo such as a stronger physical body and Yang Yuan than the ancient Tianlong. Second, it is impossible to have so many Jindan level and Zhengxuan level Taoists. The Xian Shayin Qi that can be repaired in one double cultivation may be only 1,000th and 1/10,000th of Wei Suo and Han Weiwei's double cultivation. Here, even if the general monks do day and night repairs, and repairing the iron pestle into a needle, it is impossible to upgrade Xuanxia Ghost Claws to the power of the fairy level. It is good to reach the Dao level. No. But as soon as Wei Suo glanced out to see the scene of Ji Yat and others, he was dumbfounded again. This makes the cultivation madness of those who relied on Spirit Stone and Spirit Pill to retreat from ancient times to the end, and finally it was difficult to cultivate that Jin Dan was all white hair? Now not only Ji Yat and others have already broken through at least one remedial practice, even the lowest repaired Yejia siblings and Du Gu Yuyun have reached the 5 points, and will soon hit Jindan. Why haven't I found such a place early in the past? If I found such a place early, let alone the true fairy, maybe the Emperor Heaven above the true fairy is possible. Seeing such a scene, Wei Suo couldn't help but wailing again. But he just screamed so verbally. His heart was also very clear. If there is no old classics, it would be useless to throw him here. It was the young man in Chinese clothes who first got the ancient books of the ancients who didn't have such an encounter, and he didn't know about the battle between the famine and the spirits. Otherwise, if the young man in Chinese clothes had discovered the original problem of Luo Huhuang early, he would have discovered this. The words of the aboriginal spirit garden in Futu might be that the young man in Chinese clothes had already ruled the world, dominating all directions, and shook the world today. After wailing with such a sentimental expression on his mouth, Wei Suo was moved, and he glanced directly at the top of the hill in the garden to check it out. He flew to the top of the Lingyuan mountain to check, because he had insufficient elixir similar to the purple fox flower on hand, and if it was distributed to the Ye family brothers and sisters and Du Gaiyun to break through Jindan, it might not be 100% safe, and the top of the mountain, the place where the aura overflowed, gave him the least confusion and unfavorable energy. If a magic circle can be directly arranged on the top of this mountain, the brothers and sisters of the Ye family and Du Gu Yun will break through Jindan at least. I'm doing the ancient blue diamond grass. There are surprises everywhere, if you want to scare me alive. As a result, Wei Suo had just schemed to the top of the mountain. He saw a pool of 5 feet square at the top of the mountain. The aura and the spring water gurgled out. Before he could find out how much aura remained in this spiritual vein, he saw it at a glance. At the bottom of the pond, there are 3 plants growing like the hardest blue spar, dyeing the bottom of the pond dark blue. These 3 blue elixirs suddenly made Wei Suo make a strange cry. The old ancient blue diamond grass, according to the records in the old ancient herbal book, is not only a kind of elixir that accumulates horror and even cultivates into a profound advancement, and this elixir also has a lot of spiritual enhancement. Function. It can be said that among all the elixir we have seen in the past, these 3 wild blue diamonds are probably the most valuable. Not to mention the 3 ancient blue diamond grasses themselves, the pool water of the pond that gave birth to this ancient blue diamond grass will have a lot of medicinal powers, and it is also an extraordinary elixir. It seems that today is really a profiteer for small profiteers. If you don't open it for 3 years, you will eat for 3 years when you open it. Turning the ancient scriptures of the Mother Earth, while diligently looking down, Wei Suo couldn't help but sigh, and stretched out his hand, photographed the 3 wild ancient blue diamonds and put them in the Dan bottle. Directly a big stone rolled in, and a sharp sword gas was cut into an extremely flat platform, which was placed next to the spiritual pool at the top and began to set up the magic circle. This land in the barren garden is completely formed naturally, not artificially. That is to say, if the Futu is a little star photographed by the great power of the barren, then this spiritual vein itself is the spiritual vein in the little star. No wonder the ancient powers are so keen to take the stars down. It turns out that some of these stars are not only stars and meteorites that can be used to refine magic weapons. Maybe there are spiritual veins in this star, which accumulates a lot of aura. The entire star is equivalent to an immense spirit pill. Although this photographed star is no longer in the original starry sky, once the celestial position is changed, its own spiritual vein also loses the hematopoietic function, and it can no longer absorb and generate new spiritual energy, and the spiritual air flows out. One is less. But now this spirit vein, Wei Suo feels that although it has dried up for nearly half, the inner spirit is still stronger than the broken spirit vein of Haixian City that day. I don't know how many times. Under the entrapment of Jia and others who cultivated for breakthroughs, the aura inside could not be dried up for a while. In this way, the spiritual energy in the spiritual vein spewed out, like a long river flowing continuously towards Jia and others. In the vicinity of the mountain pond, the other unfavorable energies were really avoided, and the spiritual energy was pure and pure. Arrange a place here. If the Ye family brothers and sisters and Du Gu Yun break through Jindan here, even if there is no elixir such as purple foxflower, I am afraid that there will be at least 60% to 70%. Wei Suo has been inherited by Dali Tian, and he is very talented in formation and spells. Now he is already equivalent to more than half of the major forbidden masters. 1 or 2 ordinary bands are of course only a small meaning for him, only for a moment. For Kung Fu, a pale white aura mask and a pale blue aura mask have been lifted up beside the pool. Seeing that Ye family's siblings and Du Gu Yun had reached the top of the fivefold at the moment, Wei Suo greeted him directly, and he directly involved in the 2 volumes he arranged. In the aura of light, he reached out a hand and turned the 2 light yellow Chindan Miao grasses into the body, and evenly hit the Ye family brothers and sisters and Du Gu Yun. It was just after dozens of breathing time, boom, 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 3 sounds exploded, and Ye Guwei, Yes Yaozheng, and Du Gu Yun 3 bodies burst out of the dazzling beam of light. The mysterious wind of the stalks formed another tornado above the heads of the 3. What is different this time is that when the tornado was formed, there was also a loud noise. Everyone felt that the ground was shaking, and the spirit in the spirit pool formed a fountain that spouted upward. Chi! 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 A milky white aura, visible to the naked eye, sprayed from the top of the mountain like a sword. All the people were shocked and reacted. The continuous suction force of so many of them broke through too much, making this spiritual vein like a dike, and all the spirits inside were quickly vented. That's fine. Even if there is any power of the nobility in this floating mansion, if he rushes over, it has already been completely eaten and wiped away by us, and nothing has been left. With a sweep of Wei Suo's consciousness, he was more determined. The white spiritual fog that covers the entire spiritual garden can completely lock the aura vented by this spiritual vein. The spout of this aura just makes the aura in this spiritual garden more rich, makes them all repair is faster. And at this speed, less than half a jaw stick time, all the spirits in this spiritual vein will be vented out, and after they are absorbed, nothing will be left. Seeing that the Ye family's siblings and Du Guyuyun are all determined to succeed, the next batch of friends and Tao Luxiu should have no danger, and Wei Suo himself is no longer polite, and he has swallowed another plant. The barren ancient water vines, which contain amazing water spirits, also turned into water emperor spirits, and began to absorb the more and more intense spirits in the world. With so many people practicing Weizhuo, the speed of absorbing the world's aura can only be described as horror, but it is not comparable to the eruption of the spiritual veins breaking the embankment. In a moment, the aura in the entire spiritual garden is getting stronger and stronger. Even condensing into a drop of droplets, moist everywhere, there is a feeling of coming rain. I'm going to break. The second round of breakthroughs soon arrived. But this time, it was not the breakthrough of the Jindan monks, but the breakthrough of the gods and mysterious masters such as the extremely young god, Xuanhuan ancestor, and Yahuang real man. Asterisk. Tomorrow is about to erupt, let's update today and change some emotions, all 3 changes are sent out in the morning. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip, you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click add bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users please visit. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 1242. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Zion Mu Legend. The dust settled. Underscore. All of the ancient potions in the barren garden were collected, and the spirit aura of the was absorbed into the 7788. In addition to the water emperor biting the sun, we can also absorb some aura. In addition, the rest of the people could not feel the thin aura inside. Too little, this spirit pulse is still a little lacking. Wei Suo stood in the middle of the Lingqi, which had been completely dried up, with an unexplained look. Although everyone here either took Weizhuo as the head or regarded Weizhuo as an idol, but hearing Weizhuo say this, everyone still thinks that Weizhuo is so easy to be condemned. This time all of them benefited from this barren spirit garden is too great. The simple brain duo and Yegyue all broke through to the early stage of Jindan's duality, Jia, Shui Ling and Qingping all reached the late stage of Jindan's quadruple, Nangong Yuking and Han Weiwei reached the early stage of Jindan's quadruple, Qilongshan in the late Jindan five-fold period, Feng Ziyu, Zhangzhuayu and Yu Shiking all arrived in the middle of Jindan fourth-fold. It's not just them who are doing this. Yahuang live action broke through to the 2 levels of Shenxian, Xianyuan ancestors broke through from the second period of Shenxian to the triplex of Shenxian, and the Prince of Yinyin broke through to the 4-fold cultivation of Shenxian. Xin Yalan, Li Ruohe, Yushin sect master, Xuanhuan patriarch, and others, all reached the point of breakthrough soon, and then even if there is no elixir, it will take a few days of retreat to break through a renewal. In order to, not to mention Yangzi Bird and Qingluan, even Hunyuan Yunwei has already reached level 9. You know, this is not easier than the Shenxian breakthrough. Now in several great alliances with the same ancient cultivation roads, all of the divine profound powers add up, that is, an average of 8 or 9 alliances. The entire world of monasticism is also the power of dozens of gods. Normally Shenxian breaks through a recultivation, how many years of hard work? But the breakthrough of the golden pill here, the Shenxian breakthrough, and it seems to have passed casually, and this is not a breakthrough for one person or two, so many people have breakthroughs, and now they can be used for great use. There are more than 700 strains of unused ancient antiquity. For everyone, the chances here are already too big and surprisingly large. It can be said that their group of people is the luckiest group in the monastic world for tens of thousands of years. It is estimated that if there is a cultivation base and supernatural powers far beyond Weisuo to see Weisuo's current appearance, it is estimated that he could not help but kill Weisuo with the thunder, which is too much to beat. Because the benefits that Weisuo obtained in this barren ancient garden will definitely make most monks crazy and jealous. If the true fairy is divided into 10 steps between the true fairy and the two, then the few ancient antiquity potions and the aura he absorbed in it make him take 3 steps, and the true fairy weighs 2 to the true fairy. All of them directly past 3/10, and Han Weiwei broke through 3 times in a row. His Suanxia Ghost Claw's power has reached the middle level of the fairy level. Changed others, just relying on such Suanxia Ghost Claws, can run sideways, so that the general Shenxian can escape from the wind. Unfortunately, there is no Zhenjiang Xianko. However, Weisuo didn't pretend to be too long, and when he saw that he couldn't absorb too much aura, he said to Yin Liwa, "Yin sect master, you have wronged you this time, you didn't get it what good, but I guarantee with my life, unless I hang up, otherwise I will help you find Zhenjiang Xianko and make up for this loss." Nothing is lost seeing Weisuo's so serious matter. There was a wet mist rising in Yin Liwa's heart. She looked at Weisuo's voice, "Look at what silly things you say, those isn't the elixir to me the same as to Jia, as long as I can stay by your side, it doesn't matter much if there is Zhenjiang Xianko. That's different. Without Zhenyang Xianko, you can't do that." Weisuo smiled and immediately yelled Yin Liwa. "Dead prophet merchant, Tianzhu Shenzhen misses you." Originally Ling Longtian was not worried, but at the moment she heard Weisuo's sentence, she was so angry that her teeth were itchy, and she gritted her teeth at Weisuo. Said in one meal. "Yes, hurry up and find the way. What if Tianjia God and the King Shenlan come up with a few barren powers? It was originally because of this harvest." The old man in green robe immediately responded to Ling Longtian's words, and immediately shouted. It was as if the old man in the green robe had been answered, just before the old man in the green robe just said, and Weisuo hadn't had time to say anything, a sound of hollowing, like the cloth was torn, suddenly sounded. Crack! 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 A burst of ice cracked again and again. At almost the same time, all of them suddenly felt that the whole spiritual garden was shaking. "All come to me." Weisuo had some hippie smiles, but now his face changed immediately, and he gave a loud cry, facing the enemy in a direction. The white spirit mist in the distance in front of him was rolling and shaking like a wave. Isn't that the old man in the green robe with such a crow mouth? Really, there is the power of the Baron. Han Weiwei and others suddenly turned pale, and all of them could hear it now, and the bursts of ice shattered. The general voice came from the distant white spirit mist that Weisuo was facing now, and a faint terror was also revealed. It seemed that there was something terrifying, bombarding the prohibition of this spiritual garden will rush into this spiritual garden. Ah! Don't! I'm not a crow-mouth, the old man in the green robe heard Han Weiwei said, and suddenly his green face was almost scared, and he shuddered. Click. The old man in green robe didn't call it okay. With one call, there was a loud sound at the place where the white spirit mist burst. A horrible murder suddenly penetrated through the white spirit mist. This murderous opportunity is really amazing. Even the practices of Chang Sun Jing and Chang Sun Ziru have a feeling of unconsciously exuding chills in their hearts. Who? Wei Suo felt that the other party was not well intentioned, his eyes narrowed, and at the same time he screamed loudly. The true fairy breath on his body was full, and the black lotus petals that were at least 5 or 6 people tall had overlapped and overlapped in front of their group of people. However, it was the first time that the powerful defensive spells such as Haitan Molian were first displayed. Laugh. No one answered Wei Suo's voice, but there was a dim light of yellow light shining through the white spirit fog, and the white spirit fog was quickly dissipating. Come out. The prohibition was broken. Shui Linger's face was a little pale, and the other party's chi naturally made her feel frightened, and she couldn't help hiding behind Wei Suo. Close and stable. A figure exuding decay and ancient atmosphere stepped out of the white mist in one step, and the murderous body was as sharp as a knife. What? Chang Sun Ziru, Xian Yalan, and others froze. What leaps out of the white spirit fog is not the monk or the power of the barbarian, but an ancient of war wearing a decaying armor. The ancient god of war shone with a faint yellow light. The body, including the armor and the ancient spear in the body, all formed unique powers, but the ancient god of war did not have any emotion. The breath, only the monstrous killing intent, not even the divine profound breath and the true immortal breath, nor is it like a monk's powerful Dharma or Shen Nian doppelganger. Boo! As soon as this decaying ancient god of war came out, an invisible coercion instantly pressed Han Wei and others' blood and Zhenyuan into nowhere at all, so that their minds seemed to be cracking. Wei Suo also took a step ahead of him, and the void began to shine countless rays of light behind him, trying to stand alone with him to confront this decaying ancient of war he didn't know what. De Martingale. But at this moment, just seeing the look of this ancient god of war, Ling Longtian's complexion turned white, his whole body trembled, and a cry was made. When the scream of Ling Longtian sounded, the ancient spear in the hands of this decaying ancient warlord had already stretched out into the void in front of him, as if to draw towards Weizhuo, but suddenly he paused. Ganjiame, what the is this, do you know? Is it your spirit or Baron? This change suddenly stopped Wei Suo, who had already started, and asked quickly. He is a member of our spirit family, Ling Longtian's trembling voice immediately sounded. The ancient spear of the decaying ancient of war paused, but it did not stop. It was still drawn out. A grey light cut through it, and all the black lotus petals in front of Wei Suo shattered. What's the matter? He doesn't seem to know you at all, he wants to be an enemy with us. Wei Suo emitted a violent purple light in front of him, leading you way of the pale white light to the sky above. What made him a little centered was that although the magical power of this ancient god of war was above him, it was only a little stronger. With his ability, he was still able to cope with it. Boom! But at this moment, outside the rotten ancient god of war, a dim yellow light suddenly formed a dim yellow ring, and stepped out in one step, as if to force Wei Suo. Quick! Don't let him get close. As soon as I saw such a scene, Ling Longtian's face changed more dramatically and shouted like never before. What happened? Wei Suo and Ling Longtian have not known how many times they have teamed up against the enemy, and it is not an exaggeration to say that they have formed a unique emotional response. As soon as Ling Longtian made such a sound, Wei Suo intuitively knew that it was not the same, too late to think. Directly subconsciously, launched his strongest spell to date, Void Sky. Wow, a huge void that appeared to divide the whole world in half appeared in front of Wei Suo. Car. The faint yellow light flashed, and the decaying figure of the Ancient of War could be stopped in front of this huge void, because the original castration was so amazing that while the force stopped, the great power seemed his own self would burst. Kill. But there was no slightest stop. The spear of this rotten ancient of war was directly slashed on this void, and the entire void was suddenly unsustainable and shattered like a mirror. Come on. Boom. There was no change in Weisuo's look, and a horrible grey-black crescent moon pressed towards the rotten ancient of war. This ancient of war, he also cultivated the great wasteland to ask the scriptures. Just then, the exclamation of Nangong Yuking also sounded. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click Add Bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users, please visit. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 1243. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Xianmu Legend. Only then did all people find that Nangong Yuking's vitality fluctuated at the moment, and his body also exuded a faint yellowish brilliance, which was indeed very similar to the breath of the decaying ancient god of war. Asterisk. Yes, he also repaired the Wang to ask the scriptures. Don't be fooled by him, otherwise everyone except me and Weisuo can resist for a while, and everyone will be instantly Xiahua and Beishao, and Xiaoyuan will fly away in an instant. Long Tian's extremely low voice sounded in everyone's ears. Boom. The decaying ancient war spear could not pick Weisuo out of the missing crescent moon domain, flew out, and instantly became a light spot. The body of armor flew out dozens of pieces, but it made everyone feel horrified. Yes, the ancient god of war itself did not seem to have suffered much damage at all. The pieces of battle armor flying out of that body were also directly vanished, and there was no trace of broken vitality at all. What the is going on? Weisuo flew out the rotten ancient warlord with a single blow, but did not immediately chase and turned his head to look at Ling Longtian. This is your spirit clan. Can you stop it? You can use heavy hands to deal directly with. Ling Longtian's mouth trembles, and he looks like he is about to cry. It's useless, his deity may have fallen in that year, but his consciousness still has to fight. And fighting. This is a pure killing idea. Weisuo, Wu Goddess, Xuanhuan Patriarch, and others all took a sigh of relief, eyes full of horror. They finally reacted to what this rotten ancient god of war was. This is not a powerful ancient corpse, nor a dharma body, not even a mind-bearing metamorphosis. This is completely because some monks' powerful will and ideas are too powerful. Although they themselves have fallen, they still have to fight subconsciously. As a result, they have gathered strength and formed such a thing. This kind of thing is just to fight, just to kill the opponent. Even if there are no living creatures in this float, this fallen martingale is still as if it has been on a battlefield at the time of the fall, and it is necessary to fight for eternity and eternity until the power finally dissipates completely. What shocked Weisuo and others who had completely reacted was that this big martingale must have fallen here in the Great War between 60,000 and 70,000 years ago. The subconsciously condensed vitality of this period of battle is still a true fairy that is twice as heavy as the true fairy. What kind of magical power was the Daxing Tian at that time? Such characters have left such obsessions. To what extent is the war so tragic? Kill. The decayed ancient god of war transformed by the subconscious consciousness of Damertian came to a halt in the distance, and a dim yellow light appeared from his body, crossing the void and forcing towards Weisuo. You are on the road with peace of mind, and your war is over, if there is still the power of the aborigines that have not been destroyed, we will help you get rid of it. Wei Suo said such a word in respect to the forced martingale, and at the same time launched the Dongtian Shenhuo that he had changed. Boom! Wei Suo's voice came out, and the power of the Mahayana condensed the void in front of him into substance, but faster than his voice, a fiery red and golden yellow light, directly from Damaruding the whole body was revealed, such as a small world that nurtured endless thunder and fire was born in the body of Damartian. Laugh. The heavenly cover of the big martingale was directly blown away, and a horrible real fire of the sun and thunder fire condensed together with a strange principle of vitality, like a handle sword, rushing out of his heavenly spirit. This each of the extremely small thunder fire swords is rippling with the strange power that can crush the soul of the gods, making all the people present feel horrified by heart. Fajun, how could your cave fire have such a change? How could it evolve such an amazing Lei Gang? The witch goddess exclaimed. Weizhuo's current cave fire power is so amazing, just one hit defeated the big martingale. At this moment, the body of big martingale also glowed with thunder and fire, and began to crack. My descendants, continue to kill on my behalf. But at this moment, we didn't wait for Wei Suo's answer. The body of the collapsed big martingale suddenly issued a strong will. Everyone's mind heard such a voice. Swoosh. At the same time, martingale completely lost its shape, collapsed, and turned into a pale yellow torrent, rushing towards Nangong Yuking. This is the pure energy of Dawang Wendao Zheng. There is no more will. Yu Qing, he finally sensed the same breath as you, thinking you are his successor. You will soon absorb all this vitality. Wei Suo was startled, the breath of his body was violent, and the evolution was missing, and he wanted to stop this dim yellow torrent, but then, he appeared with a thrilling expression on his face, yelling, the whole person all flashed aside. Nangong Yuking's body was directly fixed in place by the power of this faint yellow torrent, but the faint yellow torrent rushed to her, but it was like exhausting the last strength, fall apart. This is directly equivalent to the spread of merits. Wei Suo responded extremely quickly. With a wave of his hand, a wave of water spirits immediately formed a mask, which wrapped the faint yellow torrent and Nangong Yuking in it. At this time, Nangong Yuking also recovered from the initial shock, and also knew that it was not a small one, and immediately sat down on the site, and practiced according to the Great Wasteland. After practicing the spell, he fully absorbed the pure and magnificent vitality outside. Boom! Outside Nangong Yuking, the circular water cover made by Wei Suo shook like a piece of ocean violently, and a violent vibrancy radiated from Nangong Yuking's body. Jindan is fivefold. This is really a terrible and unexpected encounter. Everyone was shocked, and it was comparable to the discovery of this desolate ancient elixir in the beginning. Everyone can see that Nangong Yuking's vitality was violently oscillating at this time, which was Jindan's breakthrough. Previously, Nangong Yuking just broke through to the fourth stage of Jindan's fourfold, and now it is just between a few breaths. Jindan is fivefold. This is indeed an unimaginable occasion, because even the true immortal might want to pass on the power, they may not be able to have the means to completely transform their original energy into the pure energy that others can directly absorb. For example, now Wei Suo, even if he wants to sacrifice his self-cultivation and penetrate his vitality into Xuanhuan may not be able to absorb it, and may even be rejected, resulting in many unpredictable consequences. Boom! In just a dozen breaths, the energy of Nangong Yuking's body once again shook, and the power of absorbing the faint yellow energy was obviously more than several times greater. Go straight to Shenxian. Everyone has a feeling of scalp numbness, which is probably the fastest speed they can see in their lifetime. Even when Wei Suo obtained the Water Emperor's Destroyer and Dragon Tomb and changed the method to rebuild, there was no such amazing repair speed. The void shook again. It's almost the same speed as Jindan's fourfold to Jindan's fivefold. The clouds in the sky are brilliant, the heaven and earth vitality in the far distance are all sucked in, and a huge light person is formed in the void. Wei Suo did not stay at all. He reached out a little and sacrificed the mixed gold fragment to block it above Nangong Yuking. The flesh is woody, Han Wei suddenly exclaimed in a low voice, and Nangong Yuking's body also clearly showed the flesh of woody flesh. However, Wei Suo's expression did not change at all. He stretched out a hand, and a burst of qi and blood was rushed into Nangong Yuking's body by him. He had already felt before that this vitality of Damertian was a complete source of vitality, without any true immortal breath or emperor's breath. Nangong Yuking had no preparation for impacting Shenxian, and the flesh was woody. Inevitable thing, but he has tried his qi and blood before to be effective in removing the flesh of the body, so he is worried that the demon at the time of rushing through the customs will strike. Because the location of Futu here is close to the Jushan Gang wind layer, there is a trace of Jushan Yinfen and Lei Gang that are visible to the naked eye at the moment. The vitality is very complicated, and it is very likely that various celestial illusions will form in the monk's consciousness. However, after a burst of qi and blood hit Nangong Yuking's body, Wei Suo was relieved, because Nangong Yuking's look was very calm and natural, and he kept his heart, and there would be no problem with shocking Shenxian. Boom! 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 Because of the breath that keeps rising at an alarming rate, all people even have the illusion that it seems that Nangong Yuking's body is becoming huge in their eyes. It's like feeling a witness to a mountain rising from the ground. When Nangong Yuking hit Shenxian, Wei Suo's expression was extremely calm, but just after a while, Wei Suo's eyes also grew bigger and bigger, and there was no way to keep calm. After breaking through Shenxian, Nangong Yuking's breakthrough has not stopped, and the last heavy natural energy suction has not stopped, it has reached the next round of breakthrough. Do you want to go straight to the real fairy? After only a few blinks, the faces of Wei Suo and Ji Ya all changed. At this moment, Nangong Yuking had already rushed to Shenxianmi's cultivation practice, but the faint yellow vitality in the transparent water aura made by Wei Suo still looked a lot. In this way, Damartian's last fierce blow by the Weizhuo changed until it finally became such a torrent, there was no loss of vitality at all. I don't know if these two things can make Nangong Yuking pass it. With a loud bang, when Nangong Yuking's body burst into vigor again, Wei Suo had a little sweat on his forehead, reached out a little, and quickly took the true elixir of his body and a fuchsia desolate ancient elixir. Come out. The impact of immortal is completely different from that of immortal divine mystery. Even if Wei Suo himself is almost confused, I don't know what kind of mysterious and dangerous changes will occur in the flesh when ordinary monks attack immortal. But what is certain is that impacting the true immortal is definitely more dangerous than impacting the Shenxian. But now even if Nangong Yuking stops, it's useless at all, because even if Wei Suo breaks up the rest of the vitality, just Nangong Yuking's natural entrapment when Shenxian breaks through at this moment, I'm afraid it will reach the critical point of breaking through the true fairy. Now look at the record of the true solution fairy pill and the ancient herbal medicine on the ground that is dedicated to breaking through the true fairy. Can the wild ancient purple catkins that are also useful for breaking through the true fairy can put the Nangong Yuking without any preparation on the top too? If it is successful, it is a real step forward to the sky. This kind of encounter is simply comparable to the sum of most of Weizhuo's previous encounters. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for Academy 00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click Add Bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users please visit. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 1244. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super soldier. Cultivation of rain and clouds. Buddho supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Xianmu legend. What a fairy. What a fairy. Shenqian is not particularly shocking to these people now, but true immortal is absolutely shocked to the extreme. Nangong Yuking is not outstanding among all the Taoist companions and relatives and friends around Wei Suo. Among Wei Suo's companions, the most likely to break through the true fairy is definitely the witch goddess who is about to go to Shenqian Wuzhong. To break through the true fairy, it must be someone else. Nangong Yuking broke through the true fairy, which is even more unimaginable and more shocking. Can she reach the sky in one step? Can she rush? Everyone opened their mouths wide and looked at Wei Suo and Nangong Yuking, but they couldn't make a sound. Boom! It was only in an instant that Nangong Yuking's vitality shook again, as if there was an invisible giant rising up from her body and spreading his giant arms towards the sky. The void is full of a renewal of everything, as if everything is changing. Starting to break through the fairy. Jia and everyone else can't help but brow. Poof, Wei Suo was already ready to go. At this moment, Nangong Yuking's breath was shocked, and I saw the true solution immortal pill and the fuchsia desolate purple grass floundered in his hand, and was directly charged by his water spirit. It became a fine and pure medicine, and it broke into Nangong Yuking's body at once. Boom! All directions move. All the clouds of heaven and earth in the sight of the people have all changed, forming countless huge and strange shapes, like giant spirit beasts, like a statue of Daozun, gathered around Nangong Yuking as the center. Wow! Lightning, sky fire, and starlight, like huge whips, whipped down from a very high altitude. Not good. This kind of difference between heaven and earth is similar to that when Wei Suo really broke through the true immortal, but at this time, Wei Suo had already taken out countless spirit stones, and Wei Suo, who was about to spill it, changed his face. Nangong Yuking's face suddenly showed a lot of dramatic emotional changes, and her delicate face even twisted. Wei Suo, what to do? Han Wei even exclaimed in a sudden, because everyone can see that this is definitely a very powerful situation of the demon invasion. Wei Suo was sweating heavily on his forehead. This kind of mental demon invasion can't help anyone. If anyone intervenes, it may trigger a more powerful mental demon illusion. She resisted it. But in just a few breaths, what made Wei Suo Etal's eyes flashed with ecstasy was that the look on Nangong Yuking's face suddenly became stable and peaceful. Boom! Almost at the same time, the whole world seemed to be shocked. In the void above, various starlights suddenly began to condense. It's done. It turned out that the true immortal, the closer to these Jushin Gangfeng layer and Jushin Ligang layer, the closer to the outer space stars, the more dangerous, but in case of success, the greater the benefits. Wei Suo ecstatically took out countless spirit stones and shot them, like a vortex spinning outside Nangong Yuking. He felt at the moment that Nangong Yuking's divine profound Dharma body and the true elements in his body had begun to transform, breaking through the true immortality, and there was no problem, and he also felt that in this place, Nangong Yuking naturally attracted when he broke through the true immortality. The favorable star vitality that comes down is more dense and the benefits are greater. This made him instantly aware of it. From now on, when his true immortality reaches the breakthrough of true immortality, he must also go above the 9-day Ligang layer to the height he can reach. He even thought that the ancient Huan clan was able to fix the Futu in this position, and he was close to the Jushin Gang wind layer. I am afraid that it has such deep meaning. I was actually. At this moment, Nangong Yuking opened her eyes all at once, and she couldn't believe it. She was very surprised. A unique trace of true fairy breath began to radiate from her body. A strong attraction made the various starlights above her head form a light man, and the spiritual energy exuded from the spirit stone outside her poured into her body. Only the ancient monks who received initiation can be comparable to the speed of your cultivation to true immortals. At least in these tens of thousands of years, the speed of your breakthrough from Jindan to true immortals is definitely the first person. Weisot couldn't help but shook his head. If it weren't his own mate, he would probably be jealous and crazy. Some legendary ancestors in ancient times also have some unique methods of inheritance and cultivation. Before some of the great energy can be used up, they will cultivate part of themselves as some of the top disciples in the sect, but these how many are there? Among them, how many true immortals can pass on their lives? If it were in the ancient kingdom of monasticism, it would definitely be like an ordinary civilian who suddenly became the king of a country. If it is from Shenxian to true immortals, this can be acceptable, but from Jindan to break directly to true immortals, this can make anyone crazy. Ling Longtian, what is the cultivation of that big martingale? Even Xuanhuan's ancestors inhaled deeply, calming the turbulent waves in his own mind, and at the same time couldn't help looking at Ling Longtian asking a sentence. He is an emperor heaven. Ling Longtian looked at Xuanhuan patriarch and others and replied slowly. Emperor heaven? Beyond the existence of the true fairy completely. This time everyone was shocked, but they were relieved. The fourfold and fivefold power of some true immortals has already exceeded the limit of the imagination of the divine profound power, and even other real immortals can no longer understand the unique power they use, let alone complete emperor heaven level existence beyond the real fairy. Although there is a stronger real emperor level existence, if the true immortal is that many people can't see the top at all in their lifetime, and even if they can't even look up at the appearance, then the existence of the emperor level is already 9 days away. Stars, it's not a little bit higher. Such a character devoted his last vitality and promoted one person from the golden pill realm to the true immortal weight, and everyone could still accept some. What kind of era is this? The sky dome is cracking, the world is dying, the monastic world has already reached the end, but we all have more than 3 real immortals on our side. There has been a fixed number. Chang Sunjing and Jade Sect Master could not help but glance at Zantai Linglan and Wei Suo, who have not yet been photometrically purified by Purdue God, and watched the starry light on the dying Nangong Yuking, cannot help feeling. I even have a real wife, I'm so fierce, haha. After being a bit jealous at first, Wei Suo immediately became proud again. Anyway, his current combat power is comparable to the 3 major powers of the true immortals, and he has no idea of fearing the fate of Fu Gang at all. He just thought that so many powerful people from ancient times have been powerful, but there are few buddies at all. It is also true. Especially at the Bone Age like him, there is a Taoist companion who is really immortal, which is indeed worthy of his pride. It should be known that among the previous continents, as male practitioners, there are only 3 things that can be displayed. One is one's own cultivation, one is one's own magic weapon, and the other is one's own companion. There are already countless male cultivators in the division of the nuns. The female cultivators, such as Shui Ling who are definitely in Jindan realm, are the targets of all genius monks. If a male trainee who divides his mind has a fellow in Jindan realm, he really doesn't know how many people will feel sharp, envious, and jealous. This, actually has such benefits. The smug eyebrow smiled, watching the starlight and the huge volume of suction force slowly disappear on Nangong Yuking's body. Wei Suo suddenly blinked again, and took a deep breath. When we broke through to the true fairy before, Wei Suo already felt that even if he didn't practice his true fairy body, he would naturally absorb a trace of the star's vitality, and his cultivation will also slowly grow, and at this moment, Wei Suo, but I feel that this kind of star vitality that naturally penetrates into my body is more than usual. This change comes from Nangong Yuking's natural attraction to the stars. Wei Suo is like a magnet, but Nangong Yuking is now beside him, as if there is an extra magnet, which attracts more stars. Nangong Yuking's breakthrough of true immortality is also of great benefit to his cultivation. This is an unexpected surprise for Wei Suo. If the goddess and Jiya both broke through to the true fairy, it wouldn't be several times more, and it would still benefit everyone. Wei Suo couldn't help but think of this idea, and then he couldn't help but chuckled, very wretched. He laughed because he thought of another wretched thought in his mind. Nangong Yuking is now a fairy, the body has been completely changed, the body of a fairy, the benefits of the two cultivations of double fairy. I'm afraid it will be bigger. I don't know how much it can improve the power of Xuancha Ghost Claw at one time. What sound? Just when Wei Suo was so proud, suddenly, everyone heard a whine sound coming from a distance. This kind of sound is like the sound of tens of thousands of ghosts crying and walking through the wind at the same time. And along with this sound, there is a faint fluctuation of vitality, which is very large, like a tide sweeping over. At this time, the white spirit fog surrounding the barren spirit garden had no power at all, but it was still floating in the spot. Wei Suo waved his hand, and a thunder fire swept across the white spirit fog around the entire spirit garden. Desolate, all swept away. Hiss. As soon as the white spirit fog was completely swept away by Wei Suo, he saw the outside scene at a glance. Wei Suo and others suddenly made a cold airing sound, stunned. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click add bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users, please visit Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziyi. Chapter 1245. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Xianmu Legend. All of them are now in a huge plain. The outside of this wilderness spirit garden that was originally covered with white mist is also a plain full of strange and ancient plants. It seems to be endless at all, but there are no signs of ruins and the ruins when they entered. It seems to be very far away, and it is totally another wilderness. This barren garden is just a tiny piece of an endless wilderness. The size of this float is simply unimaginable. Now the wilderness outside the wilderness spirit garden, although also covered with various ancient plants, but there seems to be no magic medicine recorded in the ancient book of ancient herbs. It should grow naturally, without special cultivation by the Baron. What impressed Wei Suo and others at the moment is that on this borderless wilderness that can't be seen at all at a glance, on the far left side in front of them, there is a huge mountain of Qingtian. This Qingtian giant mountain can really only be described by the word Qingtian, because everyone including Wei Suo and others have never seen such a huge giant mountain. It can be said that whether it was the giant mountains between the original 7 wildernesses of the mainland, or the one that Wei Suo and others first entered this floating car, the one they saw gave them an unreal feeling of up to 5,000 or 6,000 feet, and they were continuous. Compared to this giant mountain, Qingtian Mountain is simply a little brother. This giant mountain in sight, even with Wei Suo's eyes, can't see the top of the mountain at all. I am afraid it is at least 20,000 feet above the height. Because the place where everyone is in sight now seems to be half of the mountain, but it is already at least 8-9,000 feet in height. On the mountain with a height of 8-9,000 feet, most of the places are covered with a thick black mist, constantly changing various shapes, like a troll. And above the mountains of 8 or 9,000 feet, countless glimmers of light flashed, as if there were countless secluded blues, secluded black soldier blades beheading each other. The sky-high giant mountain on this float was actually half in Zhushangong under the wind layer, half of it was inserted into the 9-day gang wind layer. This is completely a situation that pierced the sky. Not to mention Wei Suo and others, this hill in the shaman's spirit garden is too small compared to this Qingtian giant mountain. What kind of scene will it be when you enter this giant mountain and the top of this giant mountain? Faced with this huge mountain, all people even have the illusion that the world is magnified infinitely. At this moment, there is a few silver-black violent winds on the Qingtian giant mountain, which is half inserted into the 9-day cloudy wind layer at the top of the mountain, and each one is the same size as the hundreds of dragons gathering. It is flowing from the middle of the mountain. Down, like a flood, rushed down the surrounding wild plains. One of them was rushing in the direction of Weisuo and others. This dark wind spreads more and more, like a tsunami, passing along the way. All the old trees and plants on the plain are twisted into pieces, countless fragments flying inside, and the momentum is even more terrifying. Fajun, this gusty wind doesn't seem to be generated naturally. Is it someone who touched the prohibition in that giant mountain? After the initial shock, the witch goddess closed her eyebrows and looked at the rapidly approaching dark and violent wind, facing Weisuo. Said, "It should be. Half of this giant mountain of Qingtian extends above the 9-day cloudy wind layer, but it is not flattened. There must be some prohibition and protection. If the prohibition is not stable, the vegetation in this wasteland has been destroyed. It's gone, it won't grow for tens of thousands of years without any movement." Weisuo nodded. Let's go, and see." After nodding, Weisuo said this to the crowd again, and greeted the crowd to move forward together. There is no shortcut in such a huge and expansive, but no map at all, and there is only one place to search the past. It was only after dozens of breaths that the tsunami-like dark wind had reached not far ahead. Poof! Weisuo directly propped up a cocky aura of light, and put everyone in it, and then all the wind and countless pieces of wood and gravel in the dark black wind shocked on the aura light shield and issued a continuous popping sound, but they were completely blocked and could not break through the yellowish aura light shield of Weisuo. Sister Yuking, you have now broken through the true fairy. How strong is your consciousness? At this moment, Han Weiwei and Shui Linger have also reached Nangong Yuking, looking around Nangong Yuking with curiosity. It may cover 1,700 miles. Nangong Yuking couldn't help but try it out, and then said this to Han Weiwei and Shui Linger. His chest slightly fluctuated, and it was obvious that his mood would be difficult to calm down for a while. Awesome! Only so much. Two sweet voices cried out, but the meaning was completely different. I felt that Shui Linger was powerful, but Han Weiwei felt less. It's so amazing. Do you still feel less? Shui Linger heard Han Weiwei's words and suddenly couldn't help saying it again. Before that, the four-armed barbarian all hit 3,000 or 4,000 miles. And it's not the peak. Isn't the four-armed barbarian only about the strength of Zhenxian? Han Weiwei grunted. They are the same as our spiritual clan. They are all very long in Xuanhuan, but it will take many years to grow up. Although the four-armed clan can only have the fighting power of the true fairy, but it is at least thousands. Only in adulthood, the longer the body has been infiltrated by the true element, the natural knowledge will naturally increase, and there are thousands of years of accumulation. If luck is not too bad, at least you will get some beneficial elixir. Linglong the Sky looked at Han Weiwei and said, although the four-armed barbarian can hit 3,000 or 4,000 miles in a single blow, the precise locking distance is definitely much worse. On the point of Xuanhuan, our monks and the aristocrats really have no way to compare. Yuanyan Patriarch and others nodded. Dead Prophet Merchant, it seems that Dongtian Shenhuo has gone through your evolution, and now Nangong Yuking should be able to use this technique. You pass this technique to her to see. Ling Longtian was deeply absorbed at the moment. In one breath, he said slowly, although the martingale is only Emperor's heaven, it has special skills and was also a figure in the highest war group at the time. Just Emperor Tian. If Ling Longtian said these 4 words at ordinary times, many people couldn't help crying. But at the moment everyone heard Ling Longtian's words, but they were all in awe. Now all of them are aware that during the War of the Northern Mang Dynasty, there were quite a few anti-celestial characters who could compete with several Emperor Heavens, and there were also real Emperor-level characters like Tongtian Emperor and Immortal Emperor. Exist. Ordinary Emperor-level figures, in the war group at that time, were indeed not particularly terrifying. But like Ling Longtian and Damertian, in the case of sneak attack or some kind of design, they can deal with the existence of the other person beyond the emperor's level, but they can also join the highest war group. Plays a big role. According to the message left by Dalishan to Wei Suo, the existence of the most powerful forces among the spirits and the top characters of the barbarians at that time did not know where to fight shortly after the war. 2. Since 8 or 9 of the martingales are falling here, this floater is probably the final battlefield of the top-level power in the Battle of Beigong. At the top, the power of the Baron tribe may have been calculated, and the power of the Spirit clan has also been brought here, occupying some advantages as much as possible. Such a top-level character, leaving a little aftermath is nothing but a trivial matter, just like the ancient submarine formed by the last subconscious of Damertian. If it were not Wei Suo, it was no match for Zantai Linglan. Yu Qing, this is the Dongtian Zhenhuo that I have evolved and improved. Joining the principle of vitality between the true fire and Lei Gangxiang, you can see if you can realize it soon. Wei Suo nodded, no nonsense, just a piece. Yafu points to Nangong Yuking. What is the current sale? Wei Sao, a profiteer, of course, is very clear. Although Nangong Yuking has arrived at the true immortal, and the power of De Wang's inquired on the sutra must be very extraordinary, but her physical body is relatively weak, and there is still a great danger to the existence above the enemy true immortal. Judging from the current situation after entering this floating temple, it may be of great benefit to continue exploring. After all, this kind of barren base camp is like the most top level at that time, at least the power of the Dishan level or above. Something that fell in the fingers of the fingers may be stronger than the usual 200 or 300 years of training outside, but it is also dangerous. After all, the broken arm of the barbarian who flew in the sky is not Bai Fei plus the big martingale that appeared. Now Wei Suo has already thought that there is probably a barbarian big one in this. Yes, you can shoot out blue broken arms non-stop, just to attract people. The only thing he can't figure out now is that, according to the description of Zantai Linglan and others, the power of the broken arms is not low. It can play that kind of power, such magical power. Why not directly born? Not directly stated in the blue broken arm. This is just as Wei Suo and others broke through the oncoming dark black wind, and flew towards the Qingtian giant mountain, where half of the peaks were inserted into the 9-day cloudy wind layer. In a huge valley, the heavenly 9 gods and gods Xuanhuan returned home, and more than 20 monks of the Anti-Fire Alliance, all shivering. In this valley, there are dozens of strange and huge ancient plants. Each green barren plant has a height of 1 to 200 feet, and its shape is like a lantern grass magnified countless times. The vine-shaped stems that meandered into the sky meandered 2 or 3 people in size. The skin of each fruit is light yellow, translucent, like a crystal film, but inside each fruit, there is an unusually clear figure. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click Add Bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users, please visit. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 1246. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Xianmu Legend. These silhouettes all look like a naked monk, but on closer inspection, some places on this famous monk are fine gold, and some places are like a carapace like a monster, skin. Moreover, These fine gold and carapace and the like seem to grow together with flesh and blood, inseparable, and become a part of the body. This feeling is like those monks who have been transformed and implanted with fine gold and monsters. Such a figure, suspended in the slurry in the fruit of the translucent epidermis, feels itself very strange, but what makes people feel hairy is that this strange figure is still exuding if the shares have a powerful atmosphere. What the is this? Tianzhu Shenzhen looked at this white complexion without even a weed, but the valley where these dozens of huge strange plants grew, looked at the Shenlan Wanyangui who was beside him with horror. In a word, he didn't dare to get close to these deliberate old plants. The breath of these things is above us, Shenlan Wanyanbagui felt for a while carefully, and his face immediately changed again. Aren't these ghost things alive? Are they breathing above us? Are they all strength above the true fairy? Tianzhu divine monarch suddenly took a step back if he was hit hard. Two princes. At this moment, one of them was wearing a golden vest and looked like a low man in his 50s. He took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. I just saw it, a classical record. This strange thing is very similar to the spirit of a slave in ancient times. Ling's Hainu. What kind of classical saying did you read? Hearing the name of the Jindan's four-repaired old man, the eyes of Tianzhu Shenzhen and Zhenlan Wanyanbei and others suddenly became all in sight. Brushes gathered on him. The classical article I have read records that in ancient times there was a sect called Hualingzong, a kind of evil poison, and it was a monk who could capture the monk from a certain plant. Make this monk like the fruit of the plant, nourish with the plant's spiritual power and nutrients, and then can graft some monsters with powerful vitality, even implant some iron inner armor in the body, or even some special rune fine gold, the magic circle. After the transformation of these monks, all of them have greatly increased their strength, and they have no consciousness. They have become slaves of this section. The low old man took a few breaths and then said, pale. Go on. It's because this kind of practice is too venomous, making the monks like plants, so that the sect was later besieged by many sects and died. According to this record, even if it is not Lingzi slave, it is almost the same thing. Tianzhu Shenzhen's eyes lit up. Then this kind of thing, can our monk control it? The classic I saw was not recorded in the classics. The classic I read only recorded some anecdotes of the ancients, but it was not specific about how to control this spiritual planting slave. The old man shook his head and said, Yandaiyu, what do you think? Tianzhu Shenzhen groaned for a moment, and looked at Shenlan Wanyanbei eagerly. The idea in his heart is already self-evident. There are as many as 40 or more of those strangely planted slave feet in this valley, and the return of Yanbei has been affirmed before, at least the cultivation practice above the true fairy. If they can be escorted by them, in the view of heavenly 9 divine monarchs, the other alliances of the entire monastic world will no longer exist, and they will all prostrate under their feet to form an unprecedented monastic kingdom, and he and Yanbei return. It is the supreme supremacy. We still don't want to touch these things. Shenlan Wanyanbei's face changed a little bit. Obviously he was also very hesitant, but after taking a deep breath, he shook his head and said with a hazy face, judging from the situation we have traveled along, it is most likely that the territory established by the extraterrestrial demon was just destroyed by the ancient power. Now, according to the classical records that even Daiyu said, it is judged to be a slave to the spirit. It's the same thing, but is it true that there is no difference between Lingji slave and Lingji slave? We still know nothing about it, and judging from the situation we have traveled all the way, this extraterrestrial demon is a lot of means to cultivate and plant. All kinds of things, like the previous Danfang, are not like ordinary Danfang. It seems that they are doing various experiments to study the medicinal properties and the new Danfang. It is very likely that Ling's Hifu is one of the experiments they did. And even if it wasn't an experiment, it was the extraterrestrial demon who planted these spiritual slaves at that time, and they have been left until today. After tens of thousands of years, no one knows that these spiritual slaves will undergo such changes. Even if there is control at that time means, I dare not try it. After all, These spirit slaves are very strange, and the fighting power should be above us. With the fighting power of so many of us, just taking a temptation, there should also be many chances of success. Tianzhu Shenjun looked at the weird silhouettes in the fruit in front of him, and said with obvious greed in his eyes. How to take only one temptation? What if all comes out? Shenlan Wangyanbei glanced at Tianzhu Shenjun. If Tianzhu Shenjun you want to try, I will not stop, but I will leave first. I don't want to take this risk. Even these weird plants, I don't want to touch it. After all, this place is amazingly vast, and let's not say that we have gained a lot of benefits now. There may be other benefits. Yan Daiyu said that if these Lingzi slaves only have the power of the 3 or 4 levels of Shenxian, they can really take risks, but now they can only be safe. Don't touch these things. Tianzhu Shenjun ordered, nodded and said this, but there was a cold expression flashing through his eyes, obviously feeling that Shenlan Wangyanbei preached to him, even threateningly implied, and secretly dissatisfied. Go. The look on Shenlan Wangyanbei's face remained unchanged, and there was no nonsense. The figure kept moving, keeping a distance of hundreds of feet from those strange and ancient plants, and swept towards the other end of the valley. Seeing his cautious look, the Heavenly Nine Divine Monarch and the other Jindan monks who turned against the Fire Alliance also circumvented carefully, and soon all disappeared into this strange valley. The evacuation of the monks of the Anti-Fire Alliance had disappeared for a full time, and a crack of was just above the valley. On the left side, a reddish ray of light suddenly split. Bai Guang suddenly felt a strong power, and it seemed to be a band from somewhere. This white light is the white robe powerfully encountered by the Damertian killing in the beginning. This white robe with the indigo light flowing on his face was previously able to escape with a large number of monks, but now he is alone. After breaking into this valley, no monks broke into the rear. And at the moment he looked like he was extremely embarrassed. His face was blue, and a big hole was broken in his left shoulder. There was a faint green light shining in it. Quite a lot of injuries are not light. This is. As soon as he fell into this valley, he suddenly saw so many huge and strange ancient plants. This white robe was also a shock to the body. But after a breath, the white robe was able to clearly see the scene in the valley. His eyes suddenly filled with surprise. I saw his whisper, even without fear of these huge strange ancient plants, fell directly under a deserted ancient plant. Dang Kong stood in front of one of 2 or 3 tall translucent berries. After seeing the figure clearly, the look of surprise on this white robe's powerful face was stronger. Then, this name broke a big hole on his left shoulder, and the white robe powerfully wounded was flying under a huge old plant in this valley, looking carefully at the translucent fruits. After carefully looking at each fruit of the huge deserted plant in the valley, the white robe stopped before one of the fruits. The figure in this fruit is relatively thin and naked, and looks like a thin young man in his 20s, but there is a long crack in his eyebrow until on the tip of the nose, as if something grows inside. The crack will show up when it is opened. Moreover, this naked, thin, low-profile young man has an irregular piece of copper-green fine gold showing through his heart and mouth, and the surface is covered with countless times smaller than ants. Tiny runes. A faint patina green divine light radiated from this piece of fine gold, flowing under the young man's pale white skin, like the blood of this young man. I saw that the white robe was standing in front of the fruit, but he bit his tongue sharply, and a mouthful of essence blood and a mouthful of true yuan spewed out. Immediately, this white robe was able to immediately move his hands together, pointing out patches of indigo light. All the blood and true elements he spewed seemed to be swallowed, hidden in the indigo blue light signs he transformed. After dozens of breaths, he continuously produced hundreds of indigo light symbols, but they converged into a rectangular indigo light symbol Go. As his right hand swiped hard, the rectangular indigo blue grate resembled a thin knife, and suddenly cut through the skin of the fruit in front of him. Poof! A stream of light yellow slurry emerged, and his indigo blue rung directly hit the low, thin, pale young man inside. Almost at the same time, the young man with pale skin, a red line crack on his eyebrows to the tip of his nose, and a piece of copper-green fine gold on his chest, opened his eyes. The sea said it would explode, and I would explode. There is an announcement of more than one and participating in the flower event on the homepage. I am playing soy sauce, set myself a goal, set pressure, and thank you all the students who have always voted red. Thanks to the Taoist friends who have been rewarding the sun and the sea, and took the opportunity to explode. The flower explosion activity is like this: the number of flowers on the mobile reading base, that is, mobile reading on the mobile phone, can grow to 20. The event will desperately explode with 7 chapters. My soy sauce will definitely explode with 7 chapters. Today I will start with 4 chapters and make a base, and then there will be updates. The 7 chapters are the base. If you want to watch the outbreak, you can also throw flowers. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click Add Bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users, please visit Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Ziyi. Chapter 1247. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Xianhuan Legend. As soon as the young man's eyes opened, there was a breath of sorrow about him as the center. All the figures in the fruit opened their eyes, as if all the ghost fire lanterns were suddenly lit. Including the young man in front of the white robe, all the silhouettes in each fruit have no emotion in their eyes. But everyone's eyes were all in full glance at the white robe. Especially the silhouettes of the fruits that have not broken the shells are all in the yellowish slurry, and the white robe is seen through the yellowish slurry. This feeling is even more extreme. The white robe is also stiff, obviously guilty. For a time, this white robe was stale in the ground and dared not move, and the figures in the remaining fruits were motionless and extremely strange. After a few breaths, except for the young man among the fruits in front of the white robe in front of the power, the rest of the silhouettes seemed to be awakened, but all closed their eyes. The young man with a sticky light yellow slurry and a strange breath still looked at the white robe powerfully. Come out and listen to my orders. After the white robe's eyes flashed violently for several times, he gritted his teeth and made a noise to the young man among the fruits. Observe, Master. A flat, zombie-like voice came out of the young man's mouth, and then, with a pop, the fruit shell in front of the white robe turned into fly ash, and the inside was naked. The strange young man stepped out in one step. Put on this vestment. Upon seeing this, the white robe was able to immediately show an extremely ecstatic look. He reached out and grabbed a long grey coat of ancient-style flowing clouds and flowing water, which he took out of the nabeo, and pointed it to the strange young man. And the weird young man put on the vest he had taken out without any nonsense. The upper body of this grey ancient vestment covered most of the strange young man's face, without feeling too weird. Do you know anything about this place? Bai Pao Daninj hesitated slightly and asked as he looked at the strange young man. I don't know, Master. The weird young man simply and neatly answered without any emotion. Do you know where you came from? Besides, I am your master, what else do you know? White robe was able to frown, and then asked. I only know that you are my master, and I don't know the rest, the strange young man replied neatly. His breath is very strange now, faintly like the breath of a real fairy, with blood, not like a dead thing, but it is very different from the blood of the general monk. There is a blood like a monk and a blood of a monster. And the feeling that the plant's anger is mixed together. It seems that this is indeed the slave of the of waste recorded in the ancestor of the of waste. Except for being ordered to act, it is like a plant, and will not consider any problems. The look of surprise in the eyes of Bairobe can flash again after that. He frowned again, and said to himself, but how can there be so many barren slaves here? Is it weirdly enshrined here, related to the barbaric ancestors? Master, what do you say? I don't know, the strange young man's voice said flatly again. From now on, you will be called the god of slaughter. Bai Pao Mengneng didn't reply at all, just looked at the strange young man and said so. Observe the master, I'm a barren slave, the strange young man answered motionlessly. Huangshen slave, what magical powers do you have? White Robe looked at this strange young man who had no feelings and no fluctuations in his voice, and asked again. Master, what is magical power? I don't know, the strange young man called the of slavery said simply. I'm always unaccustomed to this. The god of desolation can only be seen as a murderous plant that can obey words and orders, but I still ask such a question. Bairobe's face showed a dumb smile. And then whispered himself again, sneered, what magical power can be seen when the enemy is at its time? With the strength of this desolate slave, the ancient god of war, and that don't know what it is. If the metamorphosis beast comes again, let them know what it means to regret. Hard god slave, follow me. After whispering, the White Robe snorted coldly, and a layer of indigo blue light appeared from his body, and he swept forward. Follow your orders, master. A terrible breath from the god of the wild god's body rushed out, but he was not fast or slow, and always followed beside the White Robe, with a light yellow brilliance. Bairobe's body energy fluctuated and fluctuated continuously, and escaped light accelerated, but seeing the god of desolation was still not slow, and he easily followed his side, and suddenly a look of pride and satisfaction appeared in his eyes. At least the people of the Anti-Fire Alliance also entered this place, in case someone also knows some ways to control this kind of godless slave. Seeing that the White Robe and the strange young man who was called by him as a slave to the of desolation would fly out of the valley, but suddenly, the White Robe and the power seemed to think of something. Suddenly stopped. The god of abomination suddenly froze, but waited without speaking at all. Huangshen slaves, you destroy all these plants and the other god slaves inside. White Robe turned coldly towards the deserted plants and said to the god slave beside him. Observe, master. The plain slave dressed in a grey ancient vestment made a flat voice, and with a sursound, there was a patina of green light bursting out of his heart, which instantly diffused to his whole body, and then, a patina of green patterns appeared from his hands. Shooting out, formed a long copper-green long knife, which was cut towards a peculiar wild plant. The wild plant shuddered, and the whole body exuded a thick layer of light yellow light, which turned out to form a semicircular light yellow mask. Snapped. But with this knife cut, the semicircular light yellow mask froze for a moment, and it immediately shattered. At the same time that the light yellow mask shattered, the desolate plant in the inside also ruptured its epidermis, and countless light yellow juice in the inside spewed out like blood, and the fruit on it also burst out, one inside. The godless slave, like a sleeping monk, all opened his eyes again, looking at a dark White Robe and the godless slave beside him. But the godless slave who turned the bronze-green sword in his hand did not stay at all. With a sigh, the bronze-green sword passed by, and directly dropped these few slaves that fell out of the bursting fruit. All cut into segments. Snapped. After slashing these desolate slaves, the patina green light at the heart of the desolate slave beside the White Robe was flashing again, and the patina green sword in his hand was the grand light, and it was cut. A pale yellow mask automatically emitted by a wild plant, and beheaded two wild slaves that fell from the fruit of the cracked plant. Pap. 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 A bizarre giant old plant exploded, a pale yellow slurry splashed, and a name fell from it. It seemed that the godless slave who had not yet resisted was killed. In an instant, the whole valley was filled with light yellow slurry, and the fragments of the deserted plants floated, leaving only 5 deserted plants. snapped. Another barren ancient plant burst, and 3 barren slaves fell out. Originally, the patina of desolation next to the white robe was still beheaded, but at this time, when the patina of the bronze was approaching the 3 slaves of desolation, the robe of white robe was next to him. The deaf slave stopped suddenly, the patina of the green sword stayed in the air, only a devastating breath in the void kept vomiting and shaking. Among his pupils without any emotional color, it seemed that there was something else suddenly. His gaze rested on one of the 3 slaves. That was a female nun who was planted with a large piece of fiery red carapace on her back, with sharp white nail irons showing the size of her nails on her arms, giving people the feeling of growing from the bones in her body. Same. And, seeing that the god of slave controlled by him suddenly stopped, the white robe suddenly blinked violently, and instantly felt that the anomaly of this god of slave came from that female slave. Can't kill. He hadn't had time to speak out, and suddenly the godless slave holding the patina knife beside him suddenly made such a sound. What are you talking about? The white robe suddenly stopped breathing instantly, and looked at the wild slave beside him with horror. He knows much more about this kind of thing than Tianjiu Shenjun and others. He knows very well that it is absolutely impossible for this kind of thing to have its own thinking, and it is impossible to violate the order of the controller. Can't kill. The god of desolation next to him suddenly made such a voice again. At the same time, the eyes of this god of desolation were fixed on him instead. The white robe was subconscious, and his body turned into a sharp white streamer, retreating toward the rear. Almost at the same time, the patina green light of desolation has burst out again. The patina green sword with a terrifying atmosphere cut through the sky and instantly killed the white robe. What? All the cold hairs of Robe's body exploded at this moment, but he couldn't stop the patina of the patina. The indigo blue light from his body shattered instantly. Only between a scream, I saw his body stroked in 2 steps. Almost at the same time, his head fell off on its own and continued to fly out, while his body exploded with a bang, turning into a dazzling blue light curtain. This white robe is really unlucky to the extreme. One side is supreme, but after entering this float, it has encountered strong enemies one after another. It was set on fire, forced to perform secret techniques, and only one head escaped. Puff. The blue light curtain transformed by the white robe's powerful body was swept away by the patina in a breath. But looking at the direction where the white robe's powerful head disappeared, this desolate slave didn't pursue it, but the figure moved, but it plundered beside the female Xuanhuan slave who fell to the ground. After blinking his eyes a few times, he picked up the female cultivator, and glanced around. It was completely confused and didn't even know what to do. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click Add Bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users please visit. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 1248. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Xianmu Legend. Just as the white robe of great luck suffered such a shock in this valley, Weisuo and others were already on a hillside covered with hundreds of palaces that are as high as 100 feet. This hillside is about 1,400 feet from the foot of the mountain, Qingtian Giant Mountain, where half of the mountain is inserted into the 9-day cloudy wind layer. At the moment, the height of Weisuo Etal's head was 700 or 800 feet. Not only did the 9th-day winds flow steadily, but there were also a series of red golden gods piercing, which seemed to be from shooting from the top of the mountain. The gas machine brought out made Wei Suo a little creepy, and Wei Neng seemed to be still above the golden line of fire when he caused the sky tribulation. And the thing that made Wei Suo reluctant to go up the hard way is that there are many unfavorable star rays condensed in the red golden mansions. If he forcibly walks through it, the resistance is resistant, but it must be equivalent to his own Xuanhuan is okay to burn and play. At present, the hundreds of palaces in front of Wei Suo and others are empty and gleaming with white light, and these palaces are arranged in the shape of a strange hexagon. In the center of these palaces, there is a square. On the edge of the square, there stand 6 blue stone men up to 50 feet long, as if they are receiving the pilgrimage of the six-sided palace. Each of these 6 blue stone figures has a different shape. Except for one of them with only 2 arms and a pair of giant wings sticking out from behind, all the other 5 persons have 32 arms, and 32 in his arms. He holds magic items of different shapes. Both the palace and these 6 blue stone men have existed for thousands of years, exuding of vicissitudes of life. However, these palaces and blue stone men are intact. At this moment, the atmosphere is silent and mysterious. Go, let's go, and see. Wei Suo and others apparently had just arrived here. We saw Wei Suo and Ling Longtian seeing at the forefront after they said this to Ling Longtian and Ji Ya, and everyone followed Wei Suo. Behind Ling Longtian, plunged into this empty city-like complex. Ganjiame, do you recognize the people in the 6 statues? Are they the 6 most powerful among the barbarians? Just walking to the edge of this building complex, Wei Suo has seen that the 6 blue stone figures are all with different faces, lifelike, and solemn expressions. If it were not for him to feel that the building complex and the 6 blue stone figures were all carved from a very hard boulder, he would probably think it was the corpses of the 6 great aborigines. It should not be the power of the barbarian in our time. It may be the predecessors of the barbarian. Ling Longtian narrowed his eyes and shook his head. They are all one head, there are no 3 heads. It seems that it is not the most powerful yet. Han Weiwei couldn't help looking at Ling Longtian and said something. She had heard Ling Longtian said before that the most powerful ancestor-level figure among the barons had 3 heads, but the 3 heads were able to cast spells independently, and the casting speed was amazingly fast. It really shouldn't be the most powerful. Ling Longtian also nodded immediately, confirming Han Weiwei's statement. Even if it's just a head, it's enough to scare people. The voice of the old man in green robe shuddered. Indeed, now that everyone sees the 6 lifelike statues, they can't help but panic. Just the attitude of the 32 arms is like holding countless heavens and earth in the hand, which gives people a sense of oppression. There are words on it. Ling Longtian, do you know these words? At this moment, Nanggong Yuking looked at the nearby palace and asked. Hearing her words, everyone looked around and found that a plaque, also carved with spar, was hung above the main entrance of most of the surrounding temples, and there were also ancient characters on it. I don't know what the word Huangzu means. Ling Longtian frowned, and then walked a few steps. Suddenly, her eyes shot a substantial length of substance. Jingguang swept past toward a palace. How? Wei Suo's eyebrows jumped, his body flashed, and he had followed Ling Longtian. Nothing, there is something I want. Ling Longtian glanced at Wei Suo and grinned at his teeth. I'm doing. Wei Suo took a look at Ling Longtian's appearance and reacted. It must be the same as the inside of Beigong's ruins. She found something good for her and scared herself. Such a huge sky stove. What grade is this sky stove? It's not just sky fire, but also Lei Gang's arrangement, it's true thunder fire quenching. The consciousness was only swept away, and Wei Suo already felt that there was a furnace tripod with a height of more than 10 people in the palace in front of him. I couldn't help but rolled my eyes. This furnace has a bronze body, embedded with fiery red crystals the size of a skull. Inside the crystals, people have been hid with countless runes. There is obviously a strong flame of fire, which is the arrangement of the sky furnace. This furnace is so large, The fiery red crystals are dense, and the fire power absorbed by the sky fire must be extremely amazing, but the body of this furnace is also revealing a strong Leigang breath, which makes Wei Suo feel it at once. Inside the tripod, a complex circle was engraved, and more than one Thunderline Avenue pattern was struck. It is obviously a legendary thunder-fired giant tripod. Such a large furnace. Behind them, Nanggong Yuking and Ji Ya also couldn't help but exclaimed. Bang! Ling Longtian was unkind. The purple light flashed, directly opened a large cover on this furnace tripod, and left it aside. Then the whole person plunged into the furnace tripod, grabbed a piece things that were half the size of her body in black paint came out again. Ganjiame, what kind of fine gold is this? Wei Suo's eyelids jumped, and he felt it at once. The weight of this group of things, even the powerfully forged iron and meteorite, could not be compared. Extremely heavy. It seems to know that Wei Suo had such a question, just waiting to answer Wei Suo's question before putting it away. Ling Longtian was not a nonsense, reaching for a large amount of fine gold in black paint. A layer of black and gray on the surface was wiped away, and suddenly a dazzling red light came out, brilliant as a rainbow, extremely dazzling, completely like the glory of Shenxian great power. Blood Moon Iron. It turned out to be Blood Moon God Iron. Xuanhuan ancestor, witch goddess, old man in green robe and other people exclaimed at the same time. This turned out to be the Blood Moon Iron? Is it the classical Blood Monk Iron in the monastery world? Wei Suo suddenly swallowed hard, ignoring the dazzling eyes, staring at the glamorous one. Red looked up. Blood Moon God Iron is one of the most amazing quality gold refiners in the Taoist circle. In addition to its extremely tough material and its high degree of conformity with the vitality, it can compile a variety of vitality magic circles. This kind of iron also has a special extreme quality. That is the magic weapon made with this kind of iron. Just like a monk will practice, it has a unique adsorption effect on some vitality power. The more it receives the impact of power, the closer the material is, the more the carcass of the magic weapon is stronger. To put it simply, the magic weapon made with this kind of iron is more and more durable, and the longer it is handed down in the hands of the monks, the longer the combat skills are experienced, the more powerful and solid it is. As long as it is not completely crushed into fly ash by the simply unbearable Qinwei. This kind of fine gold is described in the record as just like some extraterrestrial demon will devour some spell power. There is another title of the demon meteorite. In addition, this kind of fine gold also has the title of one-day god iron, which means that as long as it is not lost, this magic gold refining magic can be passed down through all generations. As far as this kind of iron's own carcass is concerned, the monk who can completely turn this kind of iron into fly ash is probably at least 4 or 5 times the god. Actually the Blood Moon Iron. But just a glance, Wei Suo almost speechless. The most remarkable feature of the Blood Moon Iron is that, in addition to the material's own brilliant light, the surface also naturally forms a crescent-like pattern. The longer it is quenched, the longer it is spread, the longer it goes through, and the tighter the material, the thinner the meniscus-like pattern. The bright red surface now exposed, with tiny crescent-like patterns, is extremely obvious. This Blood Moon Iron is a rare thing in the world of monasticism. There are 2 magic weapons in the record, one is a hairpin and the other is a wishful foot. The 2 magic weapons add up, and the material is estimated to be the size of a child's head, but the piece captured by Ling Longsky is now the general body of Ling Longsky. If they are all made into hairpin-like magic weapons, I don't know if it can be made into hundreds. Steel Teeth Girl. Wei Suo's eyes rolled and his face smiled with a wide open mouth. Don't laugh so badly, okay, dead profiteers, if you are lucky, I will give you half of this thing. Ling Longtian could see at a glance what Wei Suo was doing, and looked at Wei Suo contemptuously. Reach out and wipe the black ash on the surface of the whole Blood Moon gold. In an instant, dazzling red light flooded the entire hall. "It's so beautiful," Jia and Nangong looking and other people couldn't help but sigh. In addition to the super bright and shiny surface of this piece of iron, the most important thing is the extremely bright color. It can be said that everyone has never seen such a bright red. It is really a charming color. Just this color, there is a feeling that people can't help but want to collect it, even if they don't know how to refine it, they still have to feel it. "Give me half, so good," Ling Longtian's answer made Wei Suo's chatter stiff in his face. "I understand, steel teeth, not every kind of gold is useful to you, and the same kind of gold, after you refining a certain amount, is also useless to you, like the drug resistance of the panacea, right?" But stunned after a while, Wei Suo suddenly realized that he reacted and looked at Ling Longtian. "Not bad." Ling Longtian did not hide, and nodded directly. "No wonder you see useful gold as deadly life. Although your cultivation speed is fast, but the restrictions are also large, and the cultivation resources are rare, it seems that it is not as good as the skills of some barons." Wei Suo nodded. "I said, how could you be so generous this time? Just send me half of it. No matter how much nonsense you have, I will swallow it even if it's useless. Why don't you leave one piece to you?" Everyone was stunned because of a click. Ling Longtian was seen by Wei Suo. After saying this angrily, he bit off a piece of blood moon iron directly. "This mouth is really good too. Is this piece of heavenly snow god iron useful to you?" After Chang Sun's Iru stunned for a while, he smiled and took out the piece of heavenly snow god iron that Li Ruohe gave her, and looked at Li Ruohe again. At a glance, he smiled and said, "This thing was given to me by Master Li Gong. I think if it is useful to you, I will pass it on to you. Master Gong should not have any opinions. This is nature." Li Ruohe smiled slightly and said, "Thank you so much." There was another golden light in Ling Longtian's eyes. Obviously this piece of Tianxia Shen also had a great use. When he reached for it, he directly and bluntly received it in her sleeveless bottomless sleeve. "Others are more pleasing to you than others." After quickly accepting the Tianxia god iron, Ling Longtian gave Wei Suo another glance and said, "You will give her more compensation and compensation. You accept the gods, but let me compensate." Wei Suo was speechless. "Your cultivation practice is not enough. When you are more than two true celestial beings, you should be able to melt this blood moon iron, and you can help Nangong looking to make a vestment at this time." Ling Longtian was again. He glanced at him in disdain. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click add bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users, please visit. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 1249. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Xianmu Legend. I'm going to break through the cultivation of blood moon iron again to be able to melt it. Can't the thunderfire furnace of the Baron be able to melt? Wei Suo couldn't help it. Indeed, if there is a vest that can withstand the attack of the true immortal, the combat power of Nangong Yuking will exceed the power of ordinary true immortals. Blood moon god iron, it has always been possible to smelt the true immortals triple. This thunder furnace is no longer strong, nor can it be stronger than the real power of the triple immortals. At most, it is smelting and cowardly removing some impurities. Long Longtian snorted and clicked again, nibbling a large piece of blood moon god iron. Wei Suo heard another speechlessness. He knew that Ling Longtian had already given himself a face, because generally true immortals only need 3 levels to smelt, and Ling Longtian said that he can smelt with 2 levels. Already admits that he is more powerful than the ordinary true fairy. However, this kind of magic iron can only be smelted until the true fairy triple, which is really too abnormal. However, the thunder fire furnace of this barbarian is huge and powerful, and its grade is definitely much higher than that of all the refining furnaces that Weizhuo has seen before, so Weizhuo also honestly put this huge thunder. The stove was directly included in the Nabo bracelet. I don't know if there are any good things in other halls. In one click, you get a large piece of fine gold, which makes everyone excited and all minds are released, and all the palaces search for it. The appearance of this hall is similar, but the layout of the inside is different. Some seem to be a warehouse, and some seem to be a quiet room for meditation practice, but the inside are empty. It seems that the nomads leave at that time. All the things in these palaces were emptied. A moment later, Wei Suo and others plunged into a larger palace. I saw this temple, surrounded by dense bronze shelves. The shelves were filled with jade bottles, jade boxes, etc., and in the middle were 5 golden furnaces, 5 of which were all it's the same style, but it's not big. It's only half a person tall. The one is short and dull, and the surface is full of long-horned reliefs of lifelike dragons. Immediately after entering this hall, Wei Suo reached out and waved all the 5 golden furnace lids. 5 groups of golden glow suddenly sprayed from Ding Cao, and 5 groups of various color coke pieces floated out of it. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the 5 golden yellow tripods. At the moment, when they saw the 5 lumps of coke, they suddenly showed some disappointment. This hall is obviously a pavilion. The quality of these 5 golden refining pots is also remarkable, and the magic circle above is still flowing naturally. It seems that the refining is still non-stop. Everyone naturally hopes that there is something inside. Lingden, but now these 5 lumps of charcoal, everyone feels that they have lost their aura. Obviously it has been completely exhausted, and there is no use. There is a wild firewood grass here. Next, everyone naturally looked at the things on the bronze shelves around them, but after just a few breaths, the sound of surprise of Jia and the witch goddess immediately rang. This is a wild yellow bud fruit. Snowporia's medicine is still there. Then, a pleasant surprise sounded immediately. There are a lot of fly ash on the bronze shelves around, like the remnants of some elixir after decay, and there are also many decaying elixir in the elixir, and some containers containing any liquid are also depleted, only the bottom layer powder, but some elixir and containers are made of unique materials, and there are some elixir inside, which is still intact, or most of the power remains. The most exciting is Jia. The 5 golden yellow dings have been taken away by her. The magic circle on the 5 golden yellow small tripods actually had 5 or 6 different vitality fluctuations, like the layout of the legendary super medicine Ding Chunkaiu tripod. This kind of arrangement can be changed in many states such as extreme heat, extreme cold, etc., and it can refine many special magical conditions. Not only the 5 golden yellow tripods, but also many pots and utensils for potions on bronze shelves. Many of them are made of extremely rare materials, which can maintain the potency of some potions, or not to allow some of the potions that swallow the world's vitality to be contaminated and affect the power. These are the things that the alchemist dreams of, and there are some utensils made of strange crystals and meteorite, which Jia has not read in the classics. However, it seems that you have to study slowly and deliberately to find out what is the use. What happened? Just when Jia and others were pleasantly surprised to see if there were any useful elixir residues and put away useful pots and utensils, all of them saw Wei Suo suddenly moved and ran across a corner of the wall. Is this? Everyone suddenly swept past, but saw a large beach of fly ash in the corner of the front wall where Wei Suo was, faintly indigo. Is it that a famous baron has fallen here? Shui Linger suddenly said. It should be, and it feels to me like it was killed by Damartin's great wasteland, and even the vests and other things on my body seem to have been completely decayed. There may be a bronze shelf here, but it is also decayed. It turned grey. Weisuo nodded, but pointed to both sides and said. Sure enough, at this moment, everyone has also found that there are some thick bronze-colored dust on both sides of a large beach of indigo fly ash. Does it mean that this float is too big, and when Damartien and the others are coming to the war, there are still people from the barons who are practicing alchemy refining, and later when Damartien and the others fall, the war spirit formed by the subconscious mind finally comes? Are you here? The witch goddess frowned, saying, if the Lord Martingale had been here, with his cultivation practice, maybe the entire hall would be grayed out here. This may be the case. At that time, when the top famine powers and the spirit clan fought in this float, some of the bottom celebrities of the famine clan themselves might not yet know what happened, and they continued to do the things at hand. Only to be killed later. Weisuo nodded, thinking it was very possible. After a few more conversations, and after putting away all the useful things in this palace, Weisuo and others went on. In the next palace, there were no good things left. Weisuo and others quickly arrived at the center of this building, standing in a square with 6 huge statues of the powerful aborigines. Arriving in this square, Weisuo and other talents found that in the middle of the square, there were more than a dozen of them that looked like altars and were slightly higher than the ground of the square. There were some broken crystals on the square, which seemed to be supposed to be it is a layout of teleportation arrays, but it has been completely destroyed now, and I don't know where it can be reached. After a closer examination, Weisuo even cut one of the statues of the mighty baron, and after confirming that there were no strange things, the crowd continued to move forward. It seems to have the breath of a monster. After dozens of breaths, Weisuo frowned, saying such a sentence to everyone, speeding up the pace. Is that the metamorphosis spirit beast? Everyone's eyes flashed, while continuing to quickly search the palaces along the way, while keeping up with Weisuo. After half a day of incense sticks, a group of people walked out of the palace and followed Weisuo, but they entered a valley. In front of them, they were a scene that they could not normally see outside. More than a dozen buckets of indigo blue light beams rushed into the sky in an invisible purple mist, and passed through the dark black wind layer and the red gold spurs flowing. In the purple mist, lightning and thunder seemed to be constant. I often see thick arcs jumping in it, but there is no sound at all, and there is silence. This gives a very strange and depressing feeling. Everyone's consciousness penetrated into this purple mist, and they all felt bound. Even if they had reached the true fairy Nangong Yuking, they could only penetrate less than 100 miles into them, and they could feel a strip when they came out. The huge silver-white arc jumped outside, and there was no sense of any monsters at all. There was golden light in Ling Longtian's eyes, and there was no sound for a moment, and he didn't know what weird things were inside. Oh! Oh! I saw Weisuo. Ningxian felt a few breathing time, but he made a warning gesture to everyone, and then 2 blue divine lights flashed, but the 2 only heart swords directly hit the front in the purple mist. Wow! Almost as soon as the 2 ego swords hit the purple mist seemed to counterattack, and immediately shot 5 silver-white arcs, each of which was as thick as a bucket, and whipped towards Weisuo. A strong Leigang breath suddenly filled up even Han Weiwei, and others felt unable to breathe. But Weisuo didn't care at all. A black fire appeared in front of him. Only one turn blocked the 5 thick silver-white arcs. Suddenly, there was a violent shock in the purple mist. In the purple mist that had no sound, there was a low buzzing sound suddenly in the place where 5 thick silver-white arcs penetrated. Immediately afterwards, a group of 4 or 5 watermelon-sized, dappled round shadows were worn from the purple mist. With the sound of boom, an orange beam of light squirted out of this round shadow, and the void shuddered, and the power turned out to be several times that of the 5 silver-white arcs. This is... The witch goddess and the elder son Zairu all looked surprised. What flew out at the moment was actually a thick, thick beetle covered with gorgeous yellow, black, and silver stripes. Snapped. I saw that the black fire made by Weisuo was hit by the orange beam of light from the beetle's mouth. It was actually directly destroyed and turned into a strip of flames. Oh! Almost at the same time, the silver light flashed on the body of the big beetle, and a silver grid emerged out of thin air, and his head was facing Weisuo. Asterisk. No surprises, there is more at night. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click Add Bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users, please visit Path to Heaven. Author, Wu Zy. Chapter 1250. Lord Snowhawk. Dragon Legend. Super Soldier. Cultivation of Rain and Clouds. Budo Supreme. King Yanjai. My neighbor is a banshee. Xianmu Legend. Snapped. The silver power grid fell directly on Weisuo's body. Weisuo's body was instantly covered with silver electro-optics, and even the nostrils had the silver worm-like electro-optics emitted, which looked very scary. But Weisuo's movements did not stop at all. He reached out and grabbed the big beetle in his hand. Amazing! Chang Sun Jing and Chang Sun Ziru all saw the discoloration of their faces. Although Weisuo seemed very easy to deal with this big beetle, it was only Weisuo. Both the magical power and casting speed of this big beetle are far more powerful than Chengxuan's five-fold power, and even if they are not true immortals, they are absolutely similar. If they are replaced, I am afraid they are not even opponents of this big beetle. The level of this beetle is actually extremely scary. Now in the world of monasticism after the world wrath, there are only a few monsters of this level known by the monks. Ha! Was caught directly in the hand by Weisuo, the big beetle screamed suddenly, the front half of the body rose sharply, a powerful demon gushes out inside, wanting to spray the demon Dan to fight Weisuo. Don't mess up, I don't need your life. If you mess up like this, maybe I will squeeze you to death with a shaking hand. Weisuo haha smiled, his body glowed with red glow, but just squeezed with his hands. Chirp was screaming again, as if the saliva to be spouted out was squeezed back by Weisuo. Yep. But Weisuo's complexion changed immediately, and an astonishing look appeared in his eyes. The sound of boom was a fierce squeeze of white ray of light, and the juice inside the big beetle was squirted out of the mouth, and then it was a violent tap with the hand, when the sound was like a big bell, the big beetle knocked out. Master Li Palace, what kind of monster is this beetle? It stands to reason that monster spirits of this level should be no less than our monks. Why does the spirit wisdom of this monster seem to be as low as ordinary? The order monsters are the same as a tendon. After knocking on the big beetle, Weisuo looked at Li Ruohe and Xianyalan with a bitter face. This monster seems to have no wits. Li Ruohe and Xianyalan were also very confused, stepped forward to look at the big beetle knocked out by Weisuo. Li Ruohe and Xianyalan have the deepest understanding of monsters among the people. The feeling of the big beetle before them is obviously that they can't understand the meaning of Weisuo at all. It is the kind of knowing that they are eggs. In front of it is a stone wall, all of which are low-level monsters, 1 fierce, 2 bite, and 3 hard-working routines, and there is no pause. Regardless of the strength shown, it is indeed like the most common low-level monster with low intelligence. Is this Jinyang worm? After carefully watching the big beetle knocked out by Weisuo, Li Ruohe and Xianyalan immediately looked at each other again. Li Gongju, don't you mean that this amazing thing is actually the most common 4th-level low-level monster beast Jinyang worm? Coming in, hearing Li Ruohe and Xianyalan, it was extremely overcast. Shenjun and others were a little dumbfounded. Jinyang worm is a unique species among gold beetles. It is unique in that it is very sensitive to various veins of fine gold, and it can also escape. Many monks caught this beetle to help collect some fine gold refiners. The combat power is not much combat power. The common Jinyang worm also escapes faster, and then can emit golden light. When it is against the enemy, it also relies on its own shell and wrapped in golden light to hit the opponent. Monsters of this level, let alone advance to near real strength, even advance to 6th level and 7th level strength, are simply unheard of. I can't believe it, but this beetle is a little bigger, with these black and silver stripes on its body, but the rest of the features are exactly the same as the Jinyang insect. Li Ruohe and Xian Yalan are also a little speechless. It seems that it should be the golden sun worm. The origin of this monster is the earth energy. The orange brilliance just played is the power of the demon, and it is also a variant earth energy. Silver ligang and other things may be in this piece. I stayed in the purple mist for a long time. The abilities generated during the advancement. Wei Suo glanced at the big beetle. A low-level monster like this level can actually advance to this level here. It seems to be equivalent to no one in a large treasure house. It is cheaper. Even a beetle of this level has advanced to such a level here. Wei Suo, will there be a higher level monster in this? Nangang Yuking looked at Wei Suodeo with some concern. It's not impossible, but there are very few possibilities. Wei Suo murmured, said, the war spirit of the great martingale has been wandering here for 60,000 or 70,000 years. It is estimated that monsters with inferior strength are likely to hide, but if the strength is far beyond, it is estimated that the war spirit of Damertian will be extinguished. Now whether we have it or not, we must still continue to explore it. After looking at Nangang Yuking, Wei Suo said this again. This kind of place has to be explored if you work hard, and there will be ghosts if you don't. Han Wei and Shui Linger glanced at each other, all murmured. Judging from the situation so far, this floater of the Baron is indeed a super treasure trove of metamorphosis. The worst of these characters of the barbarian are to be close to the true fairy. This kind of float is like a country inhabited by the true fairy. Here, there may be some ordinary things in the eyes of the Baron at that time. The world, that is already extremely amazing, baby. As they entered, they all seemed like a monk with only a sea of gods. When they entered a mountain gate of a deserted super sect, either they could not find anything, and the things they were going to find were very amazing. Even an idiot like low-level monster is ignorant here, and I don't know how many years it has been mixed. It is close to the strength of the true fairy. What kind of strength will that ordinary monk stay in here? From the beginning of the barren spirit garden to the previous blood moon iron and Danfang, maybe there will be more amazing things in the future. This kind of temptation is really too big. Now the old man in green robe is completely changed. Originally, he was scared and called to run, but now he has so many good things in succession, but he is using a stick to catch the old man in green robe. Don't run away at all. Master Li Palace, did your Huo Wu Ling Mao feel the breath of other monks passing by? Wei Suo glanced at the large beetle in his hand and looked at Li Ruohe. The Huo Wu Ling cat cultivated by Li Ruohe is very spiritual, and no need for Li Ruohe to answer. He stretched out a fiery red cat claw from Li Ruohe's sleeve, shaking it for a while, indicating that he did not feel that there were other monks. The breath of passing. It's really too big here. It seems that heavenly 9 gods and their route are completely different from ours. I don't know if they have gained any benefits. Wei Suo shook his head. After saying this, his eyes flickered, but he shook the big beetle in his hand toward Chang Sun Zairu, and smiled slightly. Chang Sun Zairu, are you interested in this big beetle? If you are not ugly, this beetle will give you how to give it. Anyway, this beetle has very low wits. Master Li Palace will give you a spell, and you should be able to control it. Okay. Upon hearing Wei Suo say this, Chang Sun Zairu's eyes suddenly smiled into 2 crescents, and the strength of this golden sunworm was still above her. With this golden sunworm there are more good helpers after the fight. The most important thing is that this is what her idol gave her, and it is ugly that she has become the best in her eyes. This gated spirit is not difficult for you, you can cast the spell right away. Hearing the conversation between Chang Sun Ziru and Wei Suo, Lan Yu smiled slightly and pointed out a jade symbol to Chang Sun Ziru's side. The elder son Ziru nodded excitedly, and after a few scans of the consciousness, he moved his hands together, and saw several yellow and black light signs condensed in her hands, hitting the big beetle that Wei Suo nodded in front of her. In vivo. The big beetle just shuddered slightly, and the flashes of yellow and black flashed all over again. Li Ruohe also smiled slightly, took out a fiery red pill, and wrapped it up, then turned the pill into a potent medicine and hit the beetle. Immediately, the big beetle woke up on all four limbs, woke up, did not move, and stopped in front of Chang Sun Ziru. Among the elder son Ziru's silver bell-like laughter, the big beetle tapped at Wei Suo again and again, as if to show gratitude. Go on. Seeing this scene, Wei Suo knew that the big beetle had been conquered by Chang Sun Ziru. Under the flirtatious wave of his hand, there were sword lights coming out of his body, but he launched the Wuxi Jianjing and wrapped all the people in it, marched towards the purple mist in front. Upon entering the purple mist, countless silver-white lightnings resembled bloody snakes, coming from all directions and colliding with Weizhuo's torrent of sword light. It was only in a blink of an eye that the outside world had all become a silver-white world. It seemed that there was always a huge silver-white light mass wrapping Wei Suo and others. Fijun's magical powers are indeed extremely amazing. The witch goddess looked at Wei Suo and couldn't help but think of this in his heart. Now Wei Suo looks like a stroll in the court, very relaxed, but in fact, the power of each silver-white electric light is a blow close to the ancient emperor's corpse, and it has half the power of a real fairy. Only when Wei Suo's real elements in the body seem to be endless, can he resist it by constantly inspiring Wuxi Jianjing. If Zantai Linglan and Nangong Yuking were changed, they could not walk freely in this purple mist. Boom. After about a full tea time, everyone only felt that the pressure around them was light. Huoran was clear in front, but they rushed out of the purple mist. At a glance, the eyes of Wei Suo and others were instantly rounded. In front of it is a hillside that is up, and there is a large purple bamboo forest above the hillside, and there is a big pit in one of the bamboo forests. Splash-like cracks spread on the mountain along the big pit. But in the middle of this big pit is a huge figure of indigo blue. This huge indigo figure has no vitality, and it has been dead for many years. However, this huge indigo body has 32 arms. Asterisk. 8 chapters break out. If any chapter content is not displayed, please visit to read. Tip: you can search for 0.academy00sy or 00sy in Baidu to visit this site. The site address is. To facilitate reading this book next time, you can click Add Bookmark below to record this reading record, and you can directly read this chapter next time you open the bookshelf. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Remember that the more updates you share, the faster. Mobile phone users, please visit